Charting the Course, your guide to Southwest Florida living, real estate, and life on the water.
Charting the course from docks to doorsteps. My name is Mike Ludwig. I represent What Waterways in Paradise. I'm a full-time waterfront specialist on waterfront property. And today I have with me Chris Judd. Chris, tell them a little bit more about you.
Um, Chris Judd with Naples Boat Mart here in Naples, Florida. I've been there with that family for 14 years. Been in the business here locally for 33, and it's been enjoyable the whole time. So I'm glad to be here. And Mike and I have been a team based on friendship for a lot of years, and some work there as well. But it's been great, and I'm glad that we finally got the opportunity to collaborate and do some stuff together here.
So the whole idea of this podcast is because I'm in real estate, specializing in waterfront property, and you're in the boating business, is how many times are we trying to help? We want to help our customers, our viewers, figure out the perfect house and the perfect boat. Now, that's going to change over the years, maybe, but let's just start out by taking somebody that comes down here, wants to buy a house. They bought a waterfront house. Okay, but they don't know what kind of boater they're going to be.
Hmm.
So let's just take it right now, the standard, waterfront lot, 80 to 100 feet long. They got room for two boats even, but
Yes.
so they bought that house. Okay, and we'll go into a little bit more about that. But now they come to you and they want to go boating. What are some of the
Yes.
questions you ask them?
And I'm sure this is a common thread between real estate and the recreational markets like boating. There's a there's a learning process. There's an education that has to happen. And when somebody is coming in to look at property or look at a boat, there's questions that you and I are probably going to ask that are very similar to one another, and it's to help narrow down what the right choice is, whether it be the area of the property, the style of the boat, the size of the boat, the variety of things that are going to help make that decision. It's one of the reasons why, and I know you are a firm proponent of this as well, but the education side of our interaction to our clients has been hugely, hugely important to me. Um, because ultimately, just like you don't want to be the person that they're upset with 6 months from now because they made the wrong decision. So, in my world, there's some pretty finite questions that help people kind of narrow down where they're going to land, whether it be the number of people that they're looking to entertain, or if there's no entertainment at all, if it's primarily fishing. I've joked about it for years, but I've always kind of given the question is in the form of kind of like a pie chart. If you break your boating down into pie chart form, how much of that pie is beaching and fishing and restaurants and sunset cruise? And as we start to break down that pie and we start to see that maybe in excess of 50% of that pie is fishing, we know what we got to focus on. Like many, much of that pie is eaten up by recreational boating now, and just the beach, the restaurant, the sunset cruise, the cocktail hour, that kind of stuff. And so it's at times people don't know necessarily that I'm digging for information, but ultimately the net result of that is that in a brief amount of time, somebody can really paint a very accurate picture as to what they're trying to do. Again, it's the same for real estate.
But you said something really interesting. How many people on the boat and everything would be like me saying, okay, now I understand you're looking to buy waterfront property. I mean, let's just keep it in Collier County, Naples, Marco Island area, and all the waterfront communities in between. But I'm going to say, how many bedrooms do you need?
Yeah.
How many bathrooms? Are you, what size boat do you think you need? You want to be water indirect, meaning that you're going to go under bridges, or is it, do you need to be, looking to go offshore all the time and go water direct, or is it about the amenities in the area that match all that? Because we're talking about possibly a family or significant other that's, also involved in this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting parallel. And how we met really is we're going to go back almost 18 years ago. I came down from the north, bought a waterfront property, on Marco Island, my first one, and I, had this house, I had everything. Now I needed a boat, so I went to a boat show and I met Chris, and from there, you know, Chris was just great. He was answering all my questions about boating, and then what kind of boat I thought I was going to be, kind of boater I was going to be, which it changed over the years, and we'll get into that maybe a little later.
Yeah.
But but it was very helpful. And then, of course, you did what's always important. You followed up and you were there to answer the questions after the sale. Okay. A little quick, update on, my boating experience and how I came from being no boat, okay, to where I am now. Of course, I bought my first boat from Chris and multiple boats after that from Chris. But I joined the Coast Guard Auxiliary on Marco Island because I really had a passion to understand boating and what and everything. And I got really involved, became a crew member, then a coxswain with them. And then from there, I ended up running operations for the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I still do. So from there, I got into the teaching of water, how to navigate around Marco Island and Naples and the Everglades and the 10,000 islands. And of course, I had to get my captain's license along with that because I sell real estate and I wanted to specialize in waterfront property. But all this happened and started with you. And along the way, we kind of paralleled each other, helping our clients out to make the right, decisions along the way, or helping them learn, especially from my mistakes that I made along the
Yeah.
way, too.
Well, that's in case everybody doesn't know this, Mike doesn't take things halfway. He is an absolute start to finisher. It was really cool that when Mike started our relationship. I love the fact that when someone is looking for the knowledge and the education of it all, and not, we all know as guys, the ego kind of comes into play all too often, and there are some that want to come to the table with, potentially acting as if there's more knowledge than there actually is. Um, but I love the fact that that's Mike as an example. I've used you. Your ears have to burn all the time. I've used you as an example a lot for someone that starts in the early stages of their boating career, and then takes the time to learn in whether it be self education, just all the resources available to you, whether it be your salesman, your dealer, a U.S. Coast Guard classes, that kind of stuff. But to watch you go from where you started to where you are today is literally, it's like the Cinderella story. You're the person that I love to see out there on the water now because you've taken all the right steps.
But along the way, Chris, you know what? Whenever I had a question on my learning, on my journey, or even to this day, every time I show waterfront property or somebody's coming to the area and they just don't really, they know where they want to land, they know where they want to purchase waterfront property. We've gone over their budget and everything, but they still don't know enough about the boating and what's available. I say, you know what? Go see Chris because Chris is going to take the time to find out, cutting that pie. Is it going to be fishing? Is it going to be sandbar hopping? Is it going to be, cruising, going to the restaurants? What is it going to be? But you'll break that down and give them options on the right boat for them to pick, from.
Yeah, it's a little discouraging today, and I imagine that this might be partially true in your industry as well. There's a lot of there's been a lot of change in my industry since 33 years ago when I started, and there's some pros and cons. The pros are we've got resources available to us now that we didn't have before, like all the digital networking and the marketing of all this is it's between the lead systems, customer, the management systems, all that stuff really help people sell, whether it be a home or a boat or anything in between. But sadly, over the last several years, I think we saw, due to some COVID, obviously we saw a peak in our industry that we never saw coming. It was unfortunate that a lot of other industries kind of started to flounder, and those that did, those some of those people kind of leaked from various other industries and other walks of life, and they landed in whether it be real estate or the marine world. And I'm not trying to hoard all the business, and I'm not being greedy, but the only thing that really was a little discouraging for me was there was a lot of people that just maybe were not really, didn't take it, didn't the involvement with the customer, they didn't take to heart like maybe some of us do that we've been doing it for a long time, because ultimately, and I hope you felt the same. But I'm from the initial meeting and the discussions to the future. I hate the word follow up, but I don't know of a better way to put it. But the continued contact and relationship building with your customers. It shouldn't feel like a salesman is just calling me and bugging me. There's an interest that I've taken in my clients that I know you're the same way. Um, that sadly, a lot of people that came in, let's call it 5 years ago, they quickly jumped in at a time frame where business was at a peak. You were an order taker. You sat at your desk. The doors were continually swinging. Here's money. Let me buy a boat. And there was never any selling. So
Right.
now that some of that is gone, it's there's still a little bit of that exists out there. That some individuals out there that had not been in that in our world just don't know what to do now. Now that that rush is gone, what do I do?
Right.
And I know in your world it's probably similar.
So the whole idea we created this podcast is to bring value to our viewers. Bring
Absolutely.
value so that, whether they're a first-time home buyer or a seasoned home buyer looking to upgrade, downgrade near the water with their boat or their property, we're here to bring that value. I have, my wife Tamara and I, we bought a spec house when we first got here. We built brand new houses. We bought on condos. Everything I've ever done for the last 18 plus years is waterfront, on the water, always been there. And to take a little deeper dive into that, what we're trying to bring to the table here is things that they're not going to find in the MLS and things that they're not going to necessarily know to ask their salesperson when they go to look at a boat.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about there's different types of boating and breaking it apart. Something else, when somebody's looking at waterfront property, and I'm talking about the property now, we've been seasoned, we've been down here, we've been through a lot of major hurricanes, over the last, 10 years, we've had some pretty significant storms in this area. So when they're looking at waterfront property, I can at least point them in a house or condo that's been doing well through the storms, so seawalls, boat lifts, storage. We can dive deeper into that going down, height of the home, but we can dive into that. But I think it's just something that they don't really consider, right off the bat. And then I think something else people just take for granted along the way is that, maybe they found the house, but the type of boater they want to be, the canal is too shallow or it won't accept the boat that they want, or the configuration, if there's currently a dock there, won't accept the boats that they want, or need. Um, you know, and then I think the biggest fallacy that I come across is people that come down here automatically think when they own waterfront property, and depending on the property they bought, on a low tide or a negative tide, meaning that, there's not as much water in that area, that they can still get off their lift or
Yeah.
out of their boat slip. They don't think about those types of things.
Those are, I think you and I have joked about that before. Like they're not failures. They're not. It's not. It's just things. These are learning experiences. These are things that you learn over the course of time. And that's one of the things that I hope that our time together in promoting, obviously what we're promoting, people understand that you and I are, which I say every interaction. If any of my clients are watching this podcast, I hope that one thing is always stuck in your mind, and that is I will always be more of a resource of information for my customers as I will be a salesman. If I don't have something that works for you, or it's not the right choice for you, then I'm always glad to kind of put you in the right direction. But the reason I'm saying that is it is expanding on what you're talking about. It's the information. It's
Right.
just helping somebody understand if you're looking at your first waterfront home in Marco Island, in Naples, whatever the location might be. Guaranteed, just like buying a boat, there are plenty of things that you do not know.
Right.
So you come in as the valued resource, and that has been the building blocks for me in some really really good relationships for a lot of years. And it's tough. It's hard work. I will not stand here and make it sound easy because it's not. And you know the same. But building those relationships, it takes time. It takes trust. But it's a lot of work. And when everything settles, it's worth it.
So a lot of our waterfront properties have, and I'll give you an example so we can dive in and give some, value on this first podcast. When a client's looking at a house for the first time, waterfront, and they think it's checking all the boxes, they see boat lifts out back. Okay. And as you know, boat lifts go by weight. Let's just take an average weight of 10,000 pound boat lift, but what does that really mean? A lot of times realtors can't explain that to the buyers, and the buyer doesn't understand what that means. So since 8 to 10,000 pounds is like an average boat lift that you usually see behind homes,
Mhm.
okay, so what size boat Chris, does that usually accommodate? No, and we're not, this is disclosing that, look, we're just going off the cuff here
Yep.
in a size.
Yep.
So what size does that usually accommodate if they want that?
Lift capacity overall, you're going to hear, and you'll hear this from the professionals in that industry as well. Most of the lift vendors want to see somewhere in the range of about a 10% surplus. So if I have a 10,000 pound lift, then it means I'm probably going to be somewhere into let's call it roughly a 9,000 pound boat, and that leaves me about 1,000 pounds of cushion. Um, but ultimately, using that as an example, and that's just a good topic as well. If anybody comes in, whether it be lift needs or the electrical needs for your dock, it's the value in you and me to our customers is if I don't have that as a service directly from me, then I've got a great list of people that I've met over the years and dealt with over the years that I'll put you in contact with.
Sure.
But getting to your query there, somewhere if you look at a 10,000 pound lift is an example, which is, as you know, very popular. That is probably somewhere in the range of about a 28 to a 30 foot boat, up to a 28 to 30 foot boat. Um, Depending upon where you're at, maybe a 28 to 30 foot boat is not feasible. Maybe the drafts in your area are just not enough to accommodate that. But all in all, Southwest Florida being the boating community that it is, Naples and Marco specifically, um, the waterways, with few exceptions, are typically deep enough to entertain some larger boats. Uh, a lot of my bigger boat clients, I will see, on average, probably 12 to upwards of a 24,000 pound lifts, and then some even larger. Um, but just like you and I, there's also a lot of valuable, reliable dock vendors here locally that can walk you through that portion of the discussion as well.
Another thing, so we talked about lift size, and what just gives our viewers an opportunity to understand a little bit what that means. You know, we talked briefly in the beginning about water direct and water indirect, which means
Mhm.
that water indirect means that to get out to open water, you're going to go under a bridge.
Yep.
And using that same footprint or idea, what does that mean if you find the perfect house, all the amenity, all the boxes are checked off, you don't, it's fine to navigate out to 20 or 30 minutes to open water, but what does that mean in height of a
Yeah.
boat size?
For the years of me keeping my boats in dry rack storage in Curry County, very rarely was I ever in a position where bridge clearance became a real problem. And granted, mine was not a huge boat, but ultimately, um, a good percentage of the bridges locally are on the lower side, probably 9.5, maybe 10 foot at bridge clearance. So from the waterline of your vessel to the tallest portion of your boat is what we're referring to as bridge clearance. Um, Most of them, if you have let's just use 10 feet as an example. If you have a 10-foot bridge clearance, that is probably somewhere in the range of about a 30 to a 32-foot boat before it just gets close. Can you go bigger? Sure you can. And also it depends on the design of the boat. If you have a lower profile design and it's a more sleek, sexy, 30 some foot sport design that's real low, obviously that doesn't apply. But the bulk of the boats that really are popular down here for us are statistically the family friendly boats. Family friendliness also has some degree of protection to it, which involves a hard top configuration and a nice windshield. So those are the boats that can have a little bit of height to them. But all in all, most of the bridges, with few exceptions around here, are going to accommodate comfortably into that 32, 33 foot range. There are plenty of areas as you get up into the Gulf Shore Boulevard area, Harbor Drive, those kind of areas where those bridge clearances are definitely better. Most of Marco Island, obviously. So very few get it, cut it down to a bit of a tight level, but I think it's a case by case scenario. But you really got to be into a pretty further inland destination before that becomes a concern.
And then another topic for the newer person to the area buying their first waterfront home or their first boat is, you know, you hear single engine versus more than one engine, because now you can three, four engines in some of these larger boats are amazing. But, you know, what is the real difference as far as, what do you think?
Yeah, um,
I've had them both.
when you have something that is more, if you're more offshore focused in your use of a boat, then that's where the call it the twin and above classes are prevalent. because no matter how great we get with technology, the mentality is always going to be, if I am at such a distance offshore, I want the comfort and the peace of mind of knowing I have a backup engine. When I first started in this business 33 years ago, the outboard technology was very different, and there was a distinct possibility that if you went out, let's just say 10 miles or better offshore, and I use that as an example because that's just beyond the point at which you just can't see land anymore. Once you get to that point, if you shut that engine off, there's a distinct little flutter of the heart there for a moment, and you obviously question whether or not those engines are going to start. So, but the reliability of outboard power is very different today than what it used to be. So that in itself has gotten people. Don't get me wrong, it's got people in single powered boats doing a lot more stuff offshore than they used to because they're just getting so confident that they can just turn a key switch and go. But the demand, based on the size of the boat, you really are probably going to hit somewhere. Once you hit about that 25-foot class, that's where the need or the popularity of twin power starts because we're going to be more offshore capable, but also we're going to reach a certain size of the boat where the horsepower becomes a necessity to get that boat to run efficiently, to get it to plane quickly, to be able to run at cruising speeds. Whereas say a boat, the same equivalent with single power, you're just absolutely running the guts out of the engine. You're approaching full throttle or
Right.
three-quarter throttle all the time. You lose your efficiency. You're kind of really working on that motor. So that 25 range and above becomes a twin power plant pretty much commonly today. Um, and then obviously once you get into that, say 33, 32, 33 foot range and bigger, then it goes to three engines, and then we know where we go from there. So it becomes quite a horsepower race there.
And we talked about the different boats now. We talked about different sizes and everything like that. Let's just shift that for 1 second. And we have somebody that knows they want to be in the Naples Marco Island area. They're seasoned boaters, but they're coming from a lake, a big lake, okay? And they've got a boat that's always been in fresh water,
hmm
okay? And let's say, what do you tell that person if they're bringing it down into salt water? Because I think
So
that happens a lot, you know.
it's a bit of a joke that I'll use, but it's true. It's not a joke. I put a funny twist on it. Is you can take a saltwater boat into freshwater, but it's not a good idea to do the opposite. Freshwater boats are freshwater boats for a reason. They're not. It's not a talking down to those brands. We came down as freshwater lake boaters from years ago, and quickly learned that there's a reason that boats are call it, well, say more expensive first of all, but the saltwater integrity, everything about a boat, including the reliability and the saltwater integrity of the outboard power, is just something that I think we have to take into consideration. There are some sexy, sexy boats out there that are up in lakes, northern lakes, in less toxic environments. And that's a strong word for me to say, but it's true. I will say that to my clients that just to kind of rip the band-aid off, for a boat, it's a toxic environment down here. The combination of salt water and sun and UV and you just name it, it's a it's a science experiment, going on down here at any given time. So the saltwater integrity of a boat is absolutely imperative because not for just the sake of a boat lasting down here, but if somebody spends what boats are selling at these days, boats are not inexpensive. But if you spend a good chunk of your hard earned money, and then literally within the months to come, you start to see the corrosive effects of the salt water. See things start to fade from UV, that kind of stuff. It's disappointing. And at that point, then your recreation just turned into an aggravation, and that's what I hate to see.
And then taking that one step farther, because you get this question, and I'll let you answer this question, is, we have obviously a lot more outboard engines down here than we have inboards. And,
Yeah.
you know, you know, what do you normally tell your clients? And what
There
reason for
should there
that?
shouldn't be another choice, and I'm
Yes,
not, and I
I
say that because uh, in all my years of being in this business, I've only been with three dealers, but that doesn't mean I haven't been exposed to a lot of different power choices, brands, all that stuff, because I have. But there was a time when the inboard outboard
Mhm.
power was something that I represented. Um, this was in my much earlier years, but ultimately the inboard outboard technology compared to the latest generation of outboard, there's a lot of things that just inboard outboard motors are just not really good at when it comes to saltwater, which ultimately it equates to more maintenance, and not just maintenance, but more reacting to problems. Um, the lack of shallow operation, that's another big one. Inboard outboard, the beauty of an outboard motor, if you visualize an outboard motor hanging off the back of a boat, and you trim that engine up to the point to where the lowest portion of that, what I'll call the skeg, or just beneath the prop, is just even with the bottom of the boat, meaning the boat is maintaining floating. Your propeller is still submerged fully. Your cooling intakes are still submerged fully. So it gives you the ability to in and out of gear and idle yourself back to deeper water. Um, the inboard outboard technology is something that when those drives are trimmed up as best as they will go, they are still a fair amount beneath the bottom of the boat. But that's related to shallow operation and not so much saltwater. The internal components of an inboard outboard motor are just they take a real beating when it comes to saltwater use. Your risers, manifolds, cooling components, and the problem with that is these are all things that you just don't see. You can have an engine that looks beautiful in that engine bay, and it's clean and it's polished, but what you don't see is the interior of that engine and how these components are truly just breaking down over the course of time in saltwater.
Makes sense to me. And I've always had outboards, and I totally get it. You know, just have a since we're on that, because I'm getting this as a in the real estate business, the jet boats seem to be making a little, push into this area too. I know you don't represent jet boats, but what's
Funny
what,
you mentioned that. We do now.
oh wow, see, good marketing point.
That's a recent arrival with us at Naples Boat Mart, and I'll be the first to admit that we're still learning that product.
Okay.
um, Yamaha jet boats, and knock on wood, they have been pretty well received. There's some things about the jet boats that there's definitely a value in the jet boat that is tough to beat, and I'll stand loud and proud behind that. Are we going to get the same degree of integrity and longevity and reliability as say the Yamaha outboards and maybe some of the boats that are built more offshore capable? Well, no. But for a boat that somebody wants to get in at an aggressive value and learn the waters and learn boating, not everybody's going to go out and spend 300 grand on a Grady White. To come in at a fraction of that cost and go out and spend some time on the water, that might be the boat that you have from here forward, or it might be the boat that got you out in the water long enough to realize, you know what, we're just not boaters, so I don't have to waste a lot of money, or it might be the boat that literally just leads you to your second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th boat. So the jet boat technology is finally getting to the point now where it has arrived down here, and I don't see that going away.
Is the draft on a jet boat, if we're is it significantly better than on a
There's going to be a definitely positive impact on the draft of a jet boat.
okay.
You just gotta there's again with it as with anything, pros and cons. Just got to be a little careful there, because if we really take that boat down to its bare minimum operation, then obviously a jet boat, anything with jet propulsion, is operating with a large intake in the bottom of the boat, and you just have to be careful what you're above. If you're above a pile of rocks, or you
Yeah,
just
not so
got to be
good.
careful with that stuff.
Yeah.
So I have sold those to friends, which I wouldn't if I wouldn't do if I didn't have some degree of confidence in it. But it's pretty impressive to see a product that somebody can get into, especially maybe a family that is not, they're trying boating, and we all know that Southwest Florida is not the most inexpensive place to live.
Correct.
So you're the what we invest in recreation can be limited at times. So it's an impressive product mix to give somebody the opportunity to go out,
Mm.
try boating, learn it. They may stick with that boat for all their days to come, or it may lead to other avenues.
Well, I think what we did today was create, ideas for our viewers.
Yes.
We can dive deeper into topics coming up, moving forward.
Yes.
We could spend a whole period of time on hurricane, how to get your boat ready for a hurricane. We can get into deeper dive into maintenance and everything. But I think something else that our viewers need to understand is myself specializing in waterfront property, if they just aren't sure of the area they want to be in, I can put them on my boat, take them out. We can discuss it, to see if, where they want to be. And because I think looking at waterfront property from the water is just totally different because the view
Absolutely.
back in is totally different. Not to mention, we're not seawall dock and experts, but we can pretty well look and see if the the integrity of the seawall looks pretty good or the lifts look good. Plus, something else you can't always tell is depending on what boat they want, will that, even though the setbacks work there, will it work for them? Will they be
Right.
able to easily get in and out, or they going to have to consider some modifications after they if they move forward with that particular home? Um, but we do all those things. But
Yep.
I think something else that we can add to that, which you can elaborate on a little bit, is let's say these are I got buyers that have really they're moving forward with a certain house. They're not sure what boat they really want, but they already picked the house. They're getting ready to. They're going through their closing process.
Yep.
Okay, they come over to see you, and then you've taken them through the pie, figuring things out. But what other thing we could do for them, if I'm right, Chris, is that we can put them on one of your boats, okay, and then we can navigate them to their property, get a chance to see what it is, and see if they like that boat.
Absolutely. That's been so to expand on that, if somebody has gotten to the point where they've committed to their home is equipped with a dock and lift, and even if a boat has been on that lift before,
Yeah.
well, maybe this boat obviously hasn't been on that lift before. So not only I keep preaching and harping on the whole education of it all, and really making sure that as a we're making the right decision. Part of that, here's a weird sales pitch for you. Don't
Okay.
always, you just can't always take everybody's word for what it is. You have to experience it. You have to do your own due diligence. You really got to. There's some self education and some steps that you're going to take on your own to make sure that where you're landing is where you should land. And what I mean by that is, example, family comes in. We just bought a beautiful home on Marco Island from Mike Ludwig, and we are now at the point of buying a boat. So we've gone through, as you mentioned, the whole process of breaking it down, how the boat's going to be used, how many people, what style of boating, what area you're boating, all that stuff. And then ultimately, uh, if we have gotten to the point where somebody really has fallen in love and they feel like it's the right choice, well, again, I'll sit here and I'll tell everybody a very accurate story about every boat on the lot. But ultimately, um, again, don't take people's word on how the boat's going to run, how it feels, what it can do, all that stuff. We actually put the boat in the water, and on the tail end of that process, we get a boat prepped, put it in the water, send you out with the captain. Get away from me, get away from the whole sales environment, and it's more of a neutral opportunity for someone to go out and play with the boat and determine whether or not they're comfortable with it. There may be things. The reason that I do not prefer to be a part of that sea trial process is there may be things. We're guys again, and there may be things that my ego will force me to withhold as I'm standing here talking to a salesman. But as I'm out on the boat with the captain running the boat, then maybe I'll drop my guard a little bit and say, hey, you know what? I don't know as much of this as maybe I thought I did. So let's learn together. But ultimately, part of that is getting the boat to the lift.
Right.
That is obviously a very important piece of the puzzle. And if the boat doesn't fit on the lift, and they weren't expecting alterations and expenses and everything that go along with that, then we know it's another step of the process that we've either checked off or we know we have to address. So by that time we've gone through all the steps, bring the boat to the residence, check the fitment on the lift, and then at that point, if we get that final step, that final thumbs up, then there's still a lot more time on the water we're going to spend, and that's the physical delivery and orientation, which is like yourself being a captain, you know a lot more than most people on the water, if not damn near everybody, including me. But ultimately, the education from our captain going out, taking the family back out, sea trial is over, dock fitment is over, and the final step of that process, you've basically bought the boat. We bring the boat back out again for a second trip, and now there is a very a distinct education that comes with that, down from the operations of everything on board, care, preventative maintenance. It's something that we really take seriously because There was one instance, and I learned in all of my years, there was one instance that was really, it really brought light to the whole education part of it. Several years ago, sold a boat to an individual down in Marco, and it was a smaller boat, but ultimately, after 1 year, almost a year to the date, I got the phone call from him, and he was ready to set up his annual preventative maintenance. And just one of the questions in passing that I'll always ask is, how many hours you have on the boat? And he said 6. And I thought I misunderstood him, and I thought he said 60. I said, so 60. And I repeated him, and he said, no, 6. And I had to dig. I said, why? Why? Because I'm cautious, because you never know. There could have been a bad
Yeah.
event, something that's
Yeah.
happened, and the
Family
boat had to
something.
sit. So I asked him, why? I got to ask, why only 6 hours? And he said, well, he goes, I got to be very honest. He goes, I'm still intimidated about the boat. The lack of knowledge, the lack of comfort, the lack of confidence. Um, had that boat sitting on the lift for all but 6 hours of its life for that first year. So quickly got our captain and our staff re-involved. Went back out to the boat, took him back out there, gave him the full Monty on the water again, and then from that point forward, he was good. But the reason that happened is, and I didn't find this out until much later, when he took delivery of the boat, um, basically based on the simplicity of the design, he told the captain, "You don't need to do this. You
Oh
can
wow.
you can go ahead and take off," and that's what happened. So I think that's he was partially embarrassed about that as well. But again, it just goes back to the roots of education. Again, whether it's a home, whether it's a boat, you're these are things that a home, and I just went through this recently again myself, but a home is it's a long-term investment. This is not something, obviously historically this was happening, but we're not buying homes for the sake of going to another one in a year or two or five or maybe 10 or longer. We're buying these for the long-term enjoyment, and that's exactly what most people do with boats. So for someone, it's disheartening and aggravating to me to hear people come into my office and explain occasionally, not everybody, and I'm not picking on my industry at all, but there's still you're going to have you one out of many occasionally that just try to rush through the process. They don't offer all the resources that are available to them, and it's treated like like a process that's quicker than it should be, and that's not how you operate or I operate.
Well, then again, I think in wrapping this up today, the whole idea is what we want our viewers to understand is we want to bring value, whether it's
Absolutely.
boating about the boat itself, about waterfront property, combining all those. We're going to have our contact information available so they can reach out to us. There's also going to be some links. Like I said, we're all about safety and education. We'll put the Coast Guard schedule on so they can learn how to navigate in the area if they want to take some boating classes on that.
Yep.
I'm a big proponent. I love Salt Strong. It's an online fishing club. I also sponsor that, the local chapter, the third Tuesday of every month, on Marco Island. And again, it's a place where they can come, learn about fishing and do different things. And we also want them to, let us know what they want to learn about.
Absolutely.
Waterfront homes is, about boating. Is it about besides hurricane proofing? Is it about chart plotters? I mean, we can, it's about radios, VHF, all the electronics. What electronics do you need? Why this size engine over this size? Uh, Trolling motors for smaller, trolling motors, power poles, all these accessories. Let us know what you need to know, what you're interested in. Reach out to us, and we'll make sure we cover it. And if we, and we'll, in our next segment. Chris, do you have anything to add to this?
The other one of the other things that and Mike and I are both at a state in our careers where I know he's the same, and though we've both cultivated a really a loyal and large customer base. We're all still trying to expand on that every day, and in the recent years, technology has become far more resourceful and useful to us. Things like YouTube and all these the online resources.
Yeah.
And I just recently started. I've had a family YouTube channel for a number of years, and we got family all over the globe, so it kind of helps other my Judd and various members of the family all over the globe kind of watch what the kids are doing and how they're growing up. But ultimately, recently I started a business YouTube channel as well. If you get on YouTube and you search for at Chris Judd Naples FL, if you search that, you will quickly find my channel. I have started in the recent weeks to put a lot of product videos on there, much of which is obviously what I'm currently have in marketing and representing, but also tidbits of other things about whether it be promotions, whether it be other information that should be of interest, is something I'm quickly trying to expand on as well. So if you guys think about that, jump on there, take a look. Obviously, as you hear from everybody, and pardon me, I'm still new to this, but the old classic like and subscribe, I appreciate it. But again, just like Mike said, the reason I'm bringing that up is because if anybody is looking for specific information that you and I can collectively gather
Absolutely.
and put together and promote in your resources and mine,
Absolutely.
that is something I am actively building on. So take a look.
Well, once again, this is Chris. This is Captain Mike from Waterways in Paradise, powered and anchored by Keller Williams. We are out.